The boy spent years trying to understand why the poor of Florence stayed poor, and he expected to find great mistakes, terrible gambles, foolish, dramatic errors that anyone could point to and say, there, that is what ruined him. But that was almost never what he found. The men who stayed poor were rarely destroyed by a single great mistake. They were sunk slowly by small habits they repeated every single day and never once noticed. Quiet things, ordinary things, things that felt so normal, so reasonable, that no one ever thought to question them. The boy came to picture it like a boat with a dozen tiny holes in its hull, not one of them large enough to see, not one of them alarming on its own, and yet together they let in enough water, drop by drop, to sink the whole vessel over a lifetime. The man bailing water never understood why he was always sinking. He was looking for a great leak, and there wasn't one. There were only the small invisible holes he had stopped noticing long ago, and this was the thing that unsettled the boy most. The dangerous habits were not the ones a man knew were wrong. A man can correct a mistake he can see. The truly dangerous habits were the ones he did while believing he was doing exactly the right thing. The errors dressed as good sense, the leaks disguised as prudence. What keeps a man poor is almost never the thing he knows he shouldn't do. It is the thing he does with total confidence that it is wise. So the boy set out to name them. The 7 things a person does with money every day that quietly keep them poor, all while feeling responsible and sensible and careful the entire time. And as we go through them, do not look for them in other people. Look for them in yourself. Because the reason these habits are so dangerous is precisely that you cannot see them in your own life. You will recognize most of them. The question is whether you can bear to. Here is the first, and it is the most invisible of all, because it looks like the very picture of responsibility. You spend first and save whatever is left over. Watch how reasonable it feels. The money arrives. You pay what you owe, you cover what you need, you handle the necessities like a responsible person. And then, whatever remains at the end, that is what you set aside. This feels not just acceptable, but virtuous. You're meeting your obligations first. You are being an adult about it. Who could argue with paying your costs before saving? But the boy saw the fatal flaw hidden inside this order. When you save only what is left over, you save nothing, because there is never anything left over. There never has been for anyone in the history of the world. Life expands to consume whatever it is given. The costs rise to meet the coins every time, and the leftover you were counting on to build your future simply evaporates month after month, year after year. The man doing this is not failing to save because he is irresponsible. He is failing to save because he has the order backwards, and the order is everything. The one who builds wealth does the reverse without exception. He removes his savings first, at the very start, before the spending begins, and then lives on what remains. Same coins, same life. Opposite outcome. And almost no one notices that the entire difference was hidden in which thing they did first. But the second habit is even harder to see, because it doesn't feel like spending at all. The second habit is harder to see than the first, because it does not feel like spending at all. It feels like healing. You buy things to change how you feel. The boy watched it happen all over Florence, though no one ever called it what it was. A man had a hard day, and on the way home he bought something, a small pleasure, a treat, a comfort. And for a moment, he felt better. A woman felt anxious or bored or unseen, and she bought something, and the feeling lifted briefly. None of them thought of this as a money habit at all. They thought of it as living, as a small reward, as something they had earned. I deserve this, they told themselves. And who could argue with a person deserving a little comfort? But the boy saw the hidden mechanism, and it was quietly ruinous. These men and women were not buying objects. They were buying feelings. A moment of relief, a flash of comfort to cover an emotion they did not want to sit with. And because they were paying to soothe a feeling rather than to acquire a thing, the purchase never truly satisfied. And so, it had to be repeated again and again whenever the feeling returned. The object was almost beside the point. The spending was a bandage pressed against a wound that money cannot heal, and each bandage cost coins that never came back. The most dangerous part was that it never appeared on any reckoning. A man might swear he was careful with money and never once count these purchases as waste, because in his mind, they were not spending. They were comfort, reward, self-care, things he needed. The boy understood that a habit you refuse to see as spending is the most expensive habit of all, because it drains you while hiding from every attempt to account for it. The third habit is the twin of the second, and even more cunning, because it disguises itself perfectly. You spend money for the eyes of other people. This one the boy found almost impossible for men to admit, even to themselves. A man buys a finer cloak, a heavier ring, a grander table, and he swears, completely sincerely, that he bought it for himself, because he liked it, because it pleased him. But the boy watched closely and saw the truth underneath. The pleasure was not in the thing, it was in being seen with the thing. Strip away the eyes of others, put that same man alone on a deserted island, and he would never buy any of it. He was not purchasing an object, he was purchasing the opinion of people who, in truth, were barely thinking of him at all. And this is the cruelest waste in all of Florence, because it is bottomless. There is no end to impressing others. Someone always has a finer cloak, a grander house, a heavier ring. And so the game never finishes, and the spending never stops. The man chasing the admiration of others hands them his entire fortune in exchange for a glance, a moment of envy, a status that evaporates the instant someone richer walks into the room. He calls it treating himself. It is the most enslaved spending there is. The boy noticed that the truly wealthy had quietly stopped playing this game altogether. They wore plain cloaks and were mistaken for ordinary men, and they did not care in the least, because they had nothing left to prove to eyes that were not even watching. They had discovered that the freedom to not be seen was worth more than anything the seeing could have bought. But the fourth habit is one you commit precisely when you believe you are being most careful of all. The fourth habit is the one you commit precisely when you believe you are being most careful. You let your money sit still, and you call it safety. The boy watched cautious men do this and feel wise for it. Having learned not to waste, not to gamble, not to be foolish, they took their coins and simply kept them, buried in a pot, locked in a chest, held tight and untouched, and they felt secure. Nothing could be lost this way. No bad venture could take it. No thief of opportunity could tempt it away. To the careful man, money held perfectly still was money perfectly safe, and he congratulated himself on his prudence. But the boy had already seen the quiet truth about still money. It does not stay the same. It shrinks. The coin locked in the chest bought less bread each year than the year before, though its number never changed. The world moved forward, and the money did not. And that slow erosion was a tax the careful man paid without ever noticing, because nothing appeared to be taken from him. And worse than the shrinking was the waste of what that money could have become. Every year it sat still was a year it was not growing, not working, not multiplying. The careful man thought he was protecting his wealth. He was quietly letting it die of stillness and calling the funeral prudence. Because doing nothing with money is not the absence of a decision. It is a decision, one of the most consequential a person makes. And it always has a cost. The boy understood that the man who buries his coins to keep them safe has not avoided risk at all. He has simply chosen the one risk that feels safe while guaranteeing loss, the slow, certain, invisible shrinking of everything he refused to let grow. The fifth habit hides inside something everyone accepts as normal. You pay everyone else before you pay yourself, and often pay them extra in interest for the privilege. the boy watched how money flowed out of a common man's hands the moment it arrived. To the landlord, to the merchant, to the lender, to a dozen small obligations, each one taking its piece. And threaded through all of it were the debts. The sums borrowed, the little regular payments owed, each one feeling small and manageable on its own. A man would look at a single payment and think, that is not much, and pay it without alarm. And he was right about the single payment. What he never did was add them all together and look at the river, because that was the trap. Each drain felt tiny in isolation, and so no single one ever frightened him into action. But the boy did the arithmetic the common man avoided, and the sum was staggering. All those small, reasonable payments together formed a mighty current, carrying away the greater part of everything the man earned. And a large share of it was not even buying him anything, but merely paying interest, the price of having spent money he did not yet have. He was renting his own past purchases forever, and calling each rent too small to worry about. The boy saw that the man who pays everyone first and himself last, who feels each debt as small and never sees the whole, will work his entire life inside a current that carries his money away as fast as he earns it. He is not poor because he earns too little. He is poor because a river he never chose to measure runs quietly out through his hands. But the sixth habit is the most cunning of all, because it is not about what you spend. It is about what you refuse to look at. The sixth habit is the most cunning of all, because it is not something you do. It is something you refuse to do. You never look closely at where your money actually goes. And deep down, you prefer it that way. The boy noticed that most men in Florence could not have told you where their coins went. Money came in, money vanished, and in between lay a fog they never tried to clear. Ask a common man where the greater part of his wages had gone that month, and he would shrug and blame bad luck, hard times, the cost of things. He genuinely did not know, and the boy came to understand that this not knowing was not an accident. It was a choice, made quietly, again and again, because to look closely would be to see things a man did not want to see. This was the cunning of it. Looking honestly at where your money goes forces you to face the emotional purchases you pretended weren't spending, the status you bought for eyes that weren't watching, the small drains you never summed into a river. The fog is comfortable precisely because it hides all of that. As long as a man does not look, he does not have to feel the weight of what he sees, and he does not have to change. So he keeps the fog and calls his ignorance bad luck. But the boy knew what the wealthy men did instead, and it was almost unbearably simple. They looked. They knew coin by coin where their money went. Not because they were greedy, but because they were awake. And the moment a man truly looks, the fog burns away and the leaks become visible. And a leak you can see is a leak you can seal. Most men do not have a money problem. The boy realized they have a looking problem. They lose small amounts constantly in ways they have chosen not to see. And they call the darkness misfortune when it is only a lamp they refuse to light. The seventh habit is the quietest killer of them all, and it costs more than every other habit combined. You wait for the right moment to begin, and the right moment never comes. The boy watched countless men intend to start. They would save properly, invest wisely, build something real. Soon, when things settled, when they earned a little more, when the season was better, the debts were cleared, the timing was right. It always sounded so reasonable. Why begin now poorly when you could begin later properly? And so they waited, patiently, sensibly, for a moment that by its very nature would never arrive. Because there is no season in which things simply settle, and the man waiting for one waits forever. And here the boy saw the cruelest arithmetic of all. Every one of the other 6 habits costs a man coins. This one costs him years, and years cannot be earned back. The man who delays does not merely lose the money he would have set aside. he loses the decades that money would have had to grow. And those decades are the true fortune. A small sum started today outruns a large sum started 10 years from now, because the first had time and the second did not. Waiting for the right moment is the most expensive patience there is, and almost everyone mistakes it for wisdom. The boy noticed that the wealthy had all begun before they felt ready. Not one of them had waited for certainty. They had started small, started early, started poorly, and started, which was the only thing that ever mattered. 7 habits then, each invisible in its own way. But beneath all 7 runs a single thread, and that thread is the reason you cannot see them. The boy laid all 7 habits side by side, and the single thread beneath them rose into view. The reason not one of them can be seen from the inside. Every one of these habits wears the mask of a virtue. Spending first and saving the scraps looks like responsibility. Buying comfort looks like self-care. Buying to impress looks like enjoying what you earned. Letting money sit still looks like safety. Paying everyone before yourself looks like honoring your obligations. Refusing to look at your spending looks like not being obsessed with money. And waiting for the right moment looks like patience and prudence. That is the thread. Not one of these feels like a mistake. Every single one feels like the right thing to do. And that is precisely why they are invisible, and precisely why they are so hard to escape. Because a man will fight a habit he knows is a vice. He will struggle against it, feel guilty about it, try to correct it. But no one fights a habit he believes is a virtue. Why would he? He is proud of it. He defends it. He passes it to his children as wisdom. You cannot cut a rope you are convinced is holding you up, rather than holding you down. And so, these 7 habits survive generation after generation, protected not by their strength, but by their disguise, each one sheltering safely behind the good name of the virtue it imitates. This is why the boy never judged the poor of Florence, and why you should not judge yourself for recognizing these habits in your own life. Most of the holes in the boat were invisible even to the man sinking. He was not foolish. He was not weak. He simply could not see what was dressed up to look like good sense, and no one had ever shown him how to look. Which is the whole cure, and it is almost disappointingly simple. Bring the invisible into the light. A habit can only keep working on you while it stays hidden behind its mask. So the entire remedy is to look, honestly, deliberately, without flinching. Once a week, take the 7 and hold each one up against your own life and ask the uncomfortable question plainly. Do I do this? Which of these is mine? You do not need force or discipline to defeat these habits. You need only to see them clearly, because a habit dragged into the light loses the disguise that was its only protection. The lamp is the whole of the cure. These things live in the dark, and they cannot survive being seen. So here they are once more, to hold up to the light. You spend before you save. You buy to feel better. You buy to be seen. You let your money sit still. You pay everyone before yourself. You refuse to look at where it goes. And you wait for a moment that never comes. 7 quiet holes in the hull. And every one of them can be sealed the instant you are willing to see it. Most people will finish this, recognize themselves in 3 or 4 of these, feel the sting of it for a moment, and then let the fog roll back in by morning and go on exactly as before. A few will light the lamp tonight and keep it lit. The boy could not tell you which you will be. Only the habits you dare to look at can. If you intend to be one of the few, then follow this boy, because every fable here teaches the one thing no one else will: how the world of money actually works. The next lesson is already waiting.